this astaxanthin supplement, I hear it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 100 times stronger than vitamin E, and 800 times stronger than CoQ10?
Yes, astaxanthin supports joint health, memory health, even anti-aging and immune health. This Hawaii brand delivers 3 times more nature-identical astaxanthin to your body and is a better buy than the competition. It's called Xanthicin. Safely manage your inflammatory health with Xanthicin. It's pure and highly absorbed, providing greater benefits. Visit getxantho.com and these retailers.
All right, how's it going, everybody? We welcome you to another edition of Hawaii Football Now. It's episode 19. We're nearing 20. As long as they keep us on the air for another week after this one is the first episode of 2022. That is insane that we have made it this far. Man. Happy New Year to you, Hunter. Happy New Year to our guy, Jaron, on the controls as well. Happy New Year to everybody tuning in once this episode comes out and for continuing to support the podcast. A big mahalo to our presenting sponsor Xanthicin, as well as our other sponsor, Spectrum Mobile. Jordan and Hunter back with you. It is a brand new year, a chance to perhaps turn a new leaf, a chance to perhaps pick up those New Year's resolutions before they kind of peter out in the next couple of weeks or something. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of that as we move throughout the podcast. We'll look at a bit of a big picture look, recapping this past season. As I think with the new year, we can kind of start turning the page and looking forward to next season and putting a capper on this previous season, even though there continue to be some departures that we can talk about here in just a second as well. Hunter, what was your New Year's Eve like? You've been in Hawaii for a while now, so it isn't anything new to you, but it is always kind of funny when people realize the extent that fireworks go off for New Year's Eve and sometimes the days preceding and sometimes the days after it as well. But what was your New Year's Eve like? And what is the firework experience like for you?
Jordan, this year was completely different than anything I've experienced before. I actually was flying home New Year's Eve evening. And so I was landing at 11:15 p.m. And if you guys were on Oahu, you remember how hard it was raining that night, and came down through the rainstorm and looked to my left, and there's Waianae, it's popping off. And then the plane keeps going a little ways, and there's Eva on our left, and Eva, I got to tip my cap to you folks over there. You guys do it right. I need to go over to Eva next New Year's Eve. That was where the party was happening, at least from my vantage point on Southwest Flight 1344. Pretty epic. You guys are doing it right over there in Eva, the faithful. How about you guys, man? What was going on over in Maui?
Yeah, I kept it kind of mellow this year, with the spiking cases and everything, and everybody kind of keeping it low key. But the fireworks were popping off here too, that's for sure. And it was a lot clearer on Maui, just weather-wise, as opposed to I think what I saw from over on Oahu. And you could see fireworks for quite a few miles looking out if you're looking across sort of the Central Valley, whether you're looking from Haleakala on down or looking from Wailuku side back up the mountain. It is impressive how many people invest in the New Year's celebration when it comes to the fireworks. It was quite the show. Yeah, you got it's always funny to me, man. People will go and park on the side of the freeway, they'll park on the side of highways, roads, or whatnot, just to get the vantage point, right? Because totally, at the end of the day, we all know what's happening.
It's fascinating compared to the mainland because like you go somewhere to watch fireworks on the mainland. You go to a park, you go to a school, something like that, where coming together. Hawaii is so congested where you've just got house on house on house, but then also like the unanimous commitment to the fireworks is what baffles me. Is it's not just one family, it's like hundreds of households. Just the commitment is off the charts. And so with that, we ended up going to Kaneohe after I landed, and the entire valley was full of fireworks. It was unbelievable. I love Hawaii. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's unique to Hawaii. I'm sure there's some other places around the world that they kind of get into it like us, but it is a very Hawaii thing, the way that we we pop off those fireworks. It is kind of incredible. And hopefully it brings with it some new cheer, some new year, and some optimism going forward as we kind of turn our attention back to the University of Hawaii football program. It was a tumultuous year, to say the least. It was an uncertain year. It was a year that led to frustration in a lot of ways, but had some very tangible bright spots throughout the season. And that ends with quite the bitter taste of not having played in the Hawaii Bowl, of having a ton of departures leaving the program. So what we kind of wanted to do here to start off the new year was recap what 2021 brought us, right? What this season sort of encapsulated, look at it big picture, and see how we move forward for this University of Hawaii football program. There are all kinds of things, right? You got a Senate hearing coming up later this week by the Hawaii State Legislature. We can dive into that a little bit further as we move throughout this episode, Hunter. But just a quick season recap here, right? And you run down the season. It ultimately results in a 6-7 record. Had a chance to get into a bowl game, ended up not playing in the bowl game. But you think of the start, right? And it was kind of just the way the season went, just wild roller coasters and swings and emotion. They came into this season, a team that was sort of picked to finish around 500 overall. If you look at the Vegas win totals leading into the season, if you look at some of the prognostications, some of the preseason polls and whatnot, sort of middle of the pack. And of course, this was a team that brought back a lot of talent, right? When you look at it on both sides of the football, and a tough opening schedule, no doubt about it. They go 1-4, losing 3 of the first 4 games, right? You had the week 0 game up at UCLA, lose that one 44-10. Bruins led it 28-3 after the first quarter. That one was kind of decided early on. And then they bounced back against Portland State the next week, the first ever on-campus game at Ching Complex, led it big, led it 28-0 after the first quarter, I believe it was, against the Vikings, and then kind of let Portland State make it a little interesting at the end. They end up winning that one by 14, take care of business there. Another slow start on the road the following week in Corvallis at Oregon State. They lose that one 45-27 after cutting it down to basically, 10 points in the second half. But that was another game the Beavers led by 21 after the first quarter. Calvin Turner doing Calvin Turner things in those couple of games. You remember the reverse field touchdown against Portland State. He had 191 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon State. At least some momentum building there. And then the loss to San Jose State that kind of capped off the first quarter of the season. You remember that ugly defensive fest on national television, a game that combined for 22 punts. Teams combined for 3 turnovers. Hawaii ends up losing that one 17-13, had the ball on the final possession of the ball game, trying to go down and win the football game. And then they come back and turn it around and basically win 3 of their next 4, right? To get back to 500, give themselves a great chance to get into a bowl game, albeit that 4-game stretch was sandwiched with 2 wins against New Mexico State, a game that was fairly competitive in terms of the score early on, and then Hawaii scores 24 points in the final, basically quarter plus, to win that one by 20. You had the huge upset win against Fresno State to start off October, winning that one 27-21. UH's defense forcing 6 turnovers. I think that was kind of the coming out party for this Hawaii defense, which ends up finishing basically top 5 in the country in terms of total takeaways. They had 3 turnovers inside the 10-yard line. Corey Bethley, monster performance, like National Defensive Player of the Week type honors with his 2 interceptions, the forced fumble as well that came on a strip sack. The dude was amazing in that one. A lot of momentum coming out of basically the first 6 games. You're in a position, you got back-to-back wins. You got the huge win over, at the time, nationally ranked Fresno State. They go on the road, kind of lay an egg at Nevada. That was the second start for Schrager at quarterback, and in a game for Schrager that, wasn't his best showing. Took care of the football against Fresno State, didn't against Nevada. They end up losing that one 34-17, bounce back with a dominant offensive performance running the football against New Mexico State. You remember Dedrick Parson with 215 all-purpose yards, 3 touchdowns, and that kind of set them up for the last third of the season or so. And that one kind of unraveled, right? You had the win against New Mexico State and then losses at Utah State, a game where they trailed by as many as 31. The really kind of gut-wrenching loss to San Diego State, where they lose by 7 on national television. Offense looked atrocious. And then the offense arguably looked even worse the following week at UNLV, which was basically the nail in the coffin at the time, what we thought to their bowl hopes, when UH was outscored 20-3 in the final three quarters, held to a season low 240 yards of total offense. And it looked like, all right, massive changes needed at that point. You've played 11 games. At that point, the team was at 4-7. Did not look like it was heading in the right direction. And then they bounced back the final 2 weeks of the season, Hunter, put up 50 against Colorado State. Defense helped out that, no doubt about it. The team led 36-10 in the third quarter, and then it was kind of a shootout in the second half, basically a game that wasn't quite as close as the 5-point differential. Finally ended up in the 50-45 win over Colorado State. And then the quite dominant all-around performance against Wyoming to close out the season. Hawaii retakes the Paniolo Trophy. They led it 24-0 at one point, 31-7 at halftime. Chevin Cordero looks amazing, right? 409 yards of total offense, 3 touchdowns passing, a touchdown rushing as well. And so the questions become much more complicated at that point, where it's like, hey, look, this team seems to be turning a corner. What's this offense looking like now? Why didn't it look like that earlier? Is there something to build on here? And then they get into a bowl game, which nobody thought was going to happen, right? They get into the bowl game against Memphis. Hawaii ends up pulling out a day before the game. And so I just wanted to kind of recap all of that, Hunter. And we haven't even gotten into the transfers just yet, because it kind of just shows to me, when you really start to go week by week and game by game, it's like, man, this team was all over the place. Some weeks they look amazing. Some weeks they look just absolutely inept on offense. They close out the season with 2 monster games on that side of the football. This defense at times gave up points early and then buckled down. There were some pretty complete performances. The Fresno State game, the San Jose State game, the San Diego State game, arguably the 3 biggest home games on the calendar. The defense balled out. And so it's just a mixed bag really for this group. And you look at it and it's like, all right, like, is there something to build forward here? And then all of the gut punching transfers, right? And now it's going to look like it's a much different team for this group when you think of all the starters that have left. That has been rehashed. We've rehashed it on a number of these podcasts here over the last month. The latest are Kili Iliki, running back, tight end, H-back type hybrid. Michael Graham, son of Todd Graham, also has entered the transfer portal. You got a guy like Zacchaeus McKinney, the Oklahoma transfer, who is on his way out as well. We talked about the 3 defensive starters who entered the portal last week, and Darius Muasau, Jonah Lulu, and Justice Tavai. Darius Muasau just announcing the other day that he is on his way to UCLA. A little bit of a Mililani reunion there, as he is also transferring in with former teammate Dylan Gabriel, UCF quarterback, now on his way to Westwood. A lot of Hawaii connections there. You've got a couple of Hawaii connections on the coaching staff as well. Like Malloy, Chan Kahaha. You got to imagine those guys had a big role in bringing some of those Hawaii boys into the UCLA fold as well. And so there's a whole lot there, Hunter. A whole lot to digest. And we've sort of picked it apart as we've gone throughout the season. We're now getting a chance to look back at it as a whole. Like, maybe there are more transfers down the line, but at this point, I think the team's going to look totally different, even if a guy like Corey Betley is still here, even if a guy like Zion Bowens, who maybe, excelled late in the season on offense, a guy like Dedrick Parsons on offense. This team is going to look massively different next year from a personnel standpoint. So I think it's fair to kind of, at the very least, start turning the page on this season and start kind of writing our final summaries on this past season. How do you sort of summarize what 2021 was for this group?
Man, Jordan, one word that comes to mind is weird. Weird is one that I'm gonna land on. From everything, let's just start with the schedule. We played a team twice. That never happens. We played New Mexico State twice. If you look at that, if you look at this is our first season away from Aloha Stadium, our home venue. We're now on campus, and to start out the year, for the first half of the year, we weren't even able to host fans at our stadium. Week in and week out, this team has has had to be resilient in a way that no other team in college football, I think, has been asked to be resilient. When you look at Hawaii already in general is asked to travel more than any other team in FBS. And then throw in their COVID restrictions. You throw in their fan restrictions. I'm talking about elements outside of just the game of football, that we put a winning product out there to help our guys feel like they can go out there and play their best. It's already kind of this weird, well, I wish them the best, but it's not in their favor to be a winning program. When you look at everything that they kind of went through this season, and then throw in there our performance, where some weeks we looked unbelievable. I mean, week 2, we put 49 points up against Portland State. And yeah, we laid an egg against UCLA, but UCLA did very well in the Pac-12 this year, especially in the South. And then it's just back and forth, one thing or another. It was just kind of a ruckus, Jordan. It's hard to even put into one single sentence to define this season because it continues to evolve. It's almost like a screenplay for a 30 for 30 or a Last Chance U. The more you talk about this season, because there is so much to talk about, and really depending on what happens with this Senate hearing, Jordan, we may not even be done with what has fully encapsulated the 2021 Rainbow Warriors. Now we're in 22, obviously, but a wild one to say the least.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it really does sort of read like a soap opera or a drama, right? Because you talk about all the on the field things, whether it's the highs and lows in terms of performance, some of the discontent that has bubbled over here in the aftermath of the Wyoming game, the player departures, some of the fan discontent, whether it's involved with the frustration from government officials to let people go to the games, to have them be able to consume more than just water, discontent with some of the play calling, particularly by the offensive side of the football, with some of the personnel decisions, all those kinds of things, right? All those kinds of things factor in, fair or not, warranted or not. And then this group, you think about, as you point out, the lack of institutional support, for lack of a better term, right? The fact that they're having to play in a makeshift stadium on campus, the fact that the funding for, a more built out assistant coaching staff, the fact that funding for, just facilities and things like that isn't competitive with a lot of programs around the country. Like, all those things are real. All those things are reality. Yes. And so then the question becomes, right, how much of that is, I'm trying not to use the word excuse, but how much of that is reason for a team arguably underachieving on the field? Because you look at it, right, when you look at the past performances of a lot of these guys, and you look at the desirability of a lot of these guys in the transfer portal. I mean, you're talking about multiple guys who will be scooped up by Power 5 programs. Yes. Right? Whether it's Darius Muasau, Jonah Laulu surely will end up at one of these big power schools. Nick Marner has gotten Power 5 offers via the transfer portal. A guy like Chevin Cordero swooped up immediately. Guys like Helle Hunter in Lockridge. And so a lot of these guys, right? Not to belabor that point. And so how much of the off the field uncertainty is fair to explain why the lack of success, and how much of that is just a underachievement by the group, underachievement by the coaching staff and whatnot. And it'll be really interesting to see, because all indications are, look, this is the coaching staff going forward, right? I mean, I think at this point, like, a change would have been made already, unless somebody's coming in with a multi-million-dollar check and making some demands or something like that, or the state legislature, which really doesn't quite have that kind of power unless they're going to start defunding the program or something like that. They can ask questions, but there is a little bit of autonomy when it comes to some of these decision-making powers for the university. So that is the big question to me. is, look, we can kind of explain away a lot of the happenings within this program over the course of the last season, really the last 24 months, right? Since Ton Graham came over and took over this program and has been sort of behind the eight ball, which, it's just kind of how it works at the University of Hawaii. So how much of that is the reason and how much of that is the lack of just flat out getting the job done by everybody involved, right? From the top on down, even some of the players, right? You can point to and say, hey, look, we've seen a little bit better. And that'll be, hard to answer. I think it really is hard to answer. And I think this group will get a chance, that is the coaching staff, the administration, to fill this roster as best as they can with not a lot of holdovers from the previous regime and really not a lot of holdovers from the last couple of years, and go out and kind of show, hey, look, what can this program look like when it's really sort of just the fingerprints of this regime on it. And they've got some holes on the coaching staff to fill out as well on the offensive side of the football. But that to me is sort of the transition now. It's kind of really up to them, and if the off the field things continue, whether it's, some of the handicaps that come with being the football coach at the University of Hawaii or running a football program at the University of Hawaii, like, you got to know how to operate and jump over hurdles and under hoops and all those kinds of things at this point, right? Because I don't know how much of that is changing. Like, at this point, it is what it is. And so now you got to go out and get the job done.
That's right. And I think we're kind of getting around the real question, like some real hard hitting solutions on what we can do for University of Hawaii football, because it's bigger than just a coaching staff. There's so much that goes into University of Hawaii football. There's the engagement with the community. There's lack of institutional funding that keeps a top tier athletic program at the level it's supposed to be. You look at the booster funding of mainland universities, and it's through the roof compared to what we try to manage to put on the field or put into the infrastructure, which is University of Hawaii football. And a lot of times, at least in my experience, it's felt like they're just doing their best with what they've been given. And it seems to be that way every step of the way. We might get rid of one coaching regime that wasn't great for us, and I'm putting that mildly, and then we replace it with someone like Coach Rolovich, who completely took us on a winning trajectory, literally in a matter of a year and a half, 2 years. And then we can't afford to pay the guy. He leaves for better opportunity, better resource on the mainland, and then we're right back in a similar situation with the Norm Chow regime, where you've got a coach that doesn't really look like he wants to be here, doesn't plan on investing himself here, investing with his family. It's one of those situations where we need to answer these bigger questions on what is it going to take to reinvent the product of University of Hawaii football. We've got a once in a lifetime opportunity here with a new on-campus field to really start to reimagine what this brand could become. We've always said Hawaii's kind of a party school. Let's keep the party on campus. Again, this is coming from guys on the team. This is things that we've talked about is, okay, we get the students to Aloha Stadium, but they're not coming in the stadium. They're there for the tailgate. And the tailgate experience has always been fantastic with Hawaii football. Why can we not keep that on campus? And now, because of structural issues to Aloha Stadium, we've been forced to bring it on campus. And so along with that, a new sponsor with Adidas, along with some big time players coming over from Power 5 programs just recently in the transfer portal. I like to look at things optimistically. We've got a chance here to reinvent what Hawaii football could become. And a lot of that will fall to this athletic director and this coach right now, Jordan, in 2022, there's going to be a magnifying glass over our program, I think, this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so I think that is a nice segue. We're going to take a quick break, hold some of those thoughts, Hunter, because I did kind of want to get into some New Year's resolutions, if you will, for this University of Hawaii program. And maybe, you know, spitball some of these ideas that we'd love to see enacted, maybe some realistic, maybe some more pie in the skies type stuff. But hold that thought. And I think it sort of ties in with maybe the Senate hearing coming up on Friday as well. Maybe there's some solutions that can be thrown out in a forum such as that. But before we head out of here, we need to tell you about our good friends at Xanthicin, the only brand that delivers 3 times more astaxanthin than the competition. Astaxanthin helps with joint and muscle function, with cholesterol and cognitive health. Astaxanthin is even recommended by doctors and pharmacists for its anti-aging qualities. Available at getzantho.com, Newtown Square Pharmacy, Down to Earth in Kaka'ako, and PharmaCare Hawaii. Again, check out getzantho.com. That's getzantho.com to learn more.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half time here on episode 19 of Hawaii Football Now. Jordan and Hunter back with you here as we sort of recap the season that was in 2021 and look forward. And we figured with the new year, this being our first episode of 2022, still weird to say that, we could look at some New Year's resolutions, not for ourselves. I got plenty of work to do, don't get me wrong. But I don't think anybody needs to hear about that or wants to hear about that. But for the University of Hawaii football program. So I'm kind of curious, Hunter, do you have some New Year's resolutions for the program? You can kind of take this any which way you want, you know, for the team, for the program, for the university, for individuals, however, that you would like to see in 2022 for, in the spirit of improving, of making this better, and hopefully resulting, you know, in a winning football program consistently across the board.
Oh man, if I dove into this, Jordan, it would take the next hour to get through my whole list. But I think first and foremost, we have to repair our relationship with the community of Hawaii. And I'm speaking more from the sense of the coaching staff and not necessarily making the community feel seen, heard, understood during this last season. I would love for Coach Graham to really make that a priority in this next year. We're out of COVID now. Again, like I say that tongue in cheek, obviously COVID is still part of our lives. I mean more in the sense of we are no longer in a quarantine situation where you can kind of isolate yourself. And so Coach needs to be seen in the community. Coach needs to be in places where people can see him, can ask questions, be a part of the community. I haven't always felt that from this guy, especially someone not from here. Incorporating more of the alumni. He's done a little bit of that, bringing guys in to be a part of the rock walk or whatever they do before games and things like that. Inviting past players, past coaches to come down and be a part of practice. Don't have this, you're not welcome, this is a closed environment. I get the whole COVID situation. There's ways to do that and still be safe. That's what makes Hawaii football special. And I think they got to work on repairing some of those, I'd even say injuries or damages with the community in the last couple of years. So there's a lot that we could work on. Obviously, the team needs to rebuild some resolutions, improving the offense. That has to be very high on their immediate resolution list. But I think paramount above all of that is the relationship with the community at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a very big one. No doubt about it. And I think that has to be a top-down effort. I think that can be more than just Coach Graham. I think that can be from the athletic department. Yeah. I think it can be everybody involved. Obviously, those guys are the most forward-facing, right? Whether it comes to athletic director David Matlin or head coach Todd Graham. But I think that should be a collective effort, right? And it can take the form of many different ways, whether it's, simple interpersonal relationships. I think that you touched on there, Hunter. I think a few of those can also involve, you know, getting the fans involved, making the game day experience one that I think is inviting. And again, a lot of that, as you pointed out, fairly to say, look, a lot of that was out of their hands with the fact
Right.
that, limited
Absolutely.
attendance, what could be served in terms of food and drink. But the hope is, right, and it seems that we are at that point with some of these other big events going on, that, hey, look, that game day atmosphere, make it inviting, make it friendly to families, but also friendly to a lot of the students that are there, but also incorporate some of the history of the program, right? Getting guys back involved, former players, former coaches, alums, whatever, right? Figure out a way to incorporate that into the fabric. And all of that can't just take place in the, I believe it's 7 home games next year. Like, that's all got to build, right? That's all got to come through the spring. It's got to come through the summer. And then, these big events that hopefully all that work you put in, all the groundwork that you have built leads to, packed houses at Ching come the fall. And I think all of that can look in the form of even partnerships with Adidas, as you mentioned, I think before the break here, Hunter, right? They came in pretty late. Adidas did, with Under Armour sort of pulling out of a lot of their contracts. And so there wasn't a whole lot of lead into the season for the University of Hawaii with their partnership with Adidas. But now that, they've basically got a full year leading into the 2022 season, I'm a sucker for the throwback jerseys. Like, give us some creative throwback unis, some alternates, like some of the classic looks, or at least the neo-classic, if you will, with some of these new unis, right? The black home jerseys, things like that. Totally get it. But
the white with the tribal wrap around the leg.
Yeah. We've got 13 games, right? That's the usual. Like, I get it. We can't be Oregon with 97 different uniform combinations. Understand. But there are opportunities to mix in some of those throwbacks. And it doesn't always have to be, the rainbow throwbacks. You can look at like the 1999 season, that magical year, that logo, right? The Heisman Menahune, if you will. Like, there are different opportunities to tie into the history of this program. I would love to see some of those. And that, me being the New Year's resolution, right? I don't know how realistic that is when you're talking about budget. You're talking about all these things, what Adidas is capable of. But a little bit of that at the very least, right? There were some alternate unis over the last couple of years. You look at the Pearl Harbor anniversary, right? And some of those in the USS Arizona. But I don't think we've really had the throwback look last year. And again, that was, I think, in large part because of the transition from Under Armour to Adidas. But I'd love to see some of that working its way into the fabric and tying things together. Like, I love the history of the program. I love interweaving the stories that come out of that. And I think can buoy a lot of these guys. And especially when you look at the fact of the matter is, and look, this part isn't unique to Hawaii. Wyoming's dealing with similar things. Other programs of similar stature for the University of Hawaii, like the way it's looking, there are going to be a lot of dudes coming in here. Hopefully that can play. I think that's very likely, but may only be here for a year or two, right? Transfer portal guys, grad transfers, junior college transfers. And Hawaii has had a lot of success with those type of guys in the past, but they're only spending less than half of their college career here. And so it's hard to build roots, right? To lay down roots and get into the fabric of the community. And so if you've kind of got that pre-established connection, if you've got that already built in, like, these guys can kind of step in and realize the special nature of the program, tie into guys of the past. And I think that'll help bridge the transition, or make it a little easier transition and an easier time for those guys to be brought into the fold when you're having to look at maybe, less the high school recruit, less the guy who's going to spend 4 and 5 years here in Manoa, guys that maybe are going to spend 1 or 2, 3 at most. Like, if that's becoming a bigger percentage of your program, like, it only helps to kind of have a built-in structure where it's like, hey, look, this is the University of Hawaii. It's bigger than any one person. It's bigger than any one coaching era. It's bigger than any one thing. But that's just me kind of thinking big picture with all of that. I got a couple of more, but just kind of wanted to, if you got any more, Hunter, you got any thoughts on some of the ideas we've kind of pinballed around here?
Oh yeah, I love the jersey idea. Some elements, from the Rolo era that he brought back are still very much a part of our branding right now. Having the island chain on
Mm-hmm.
the left side of the helmet. Um, really simple, but really classy at the same time, and unique to our program, our state, everything about it. I'm a graphic designer whenever I'm not on the radio here with you, Jordan. And so I'm a sucker for branding. I remember Rolo's bringing back Pride Rock mantra being so powerful to the players, something that they believed in, something that the fans could really buy into. Um, we're getting back to what made Hawaii football great. That's what we're trying to be a part of. And yeah, I see the guys on the team now, they have this TTH uh, acronym. I'm not really sure what that stands for. I would love for this coaching staff to kind of incorporate the community into what they're telling their guys, what they are trying to create and get the tires, spinning in the right direction of this program, and messages, symbols, mantras, slogans can be a powerful way to get everybody on the same page with that. And so uh, again, it's kind of mirrored with not having an identity on offense. If you're throwing that out the window, I'm fine with. If we're just going to be a defensive first team, that's been a formula. Uh, First and foremost, Jordan, by our Chicago Bears. It's not always the most profitable, but it is an identity. So I would like to see them zero down on what kind of a team they are going to create in this new season. So if there is an additional New Year's resolution, it's find out what kind of a team we're going to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? The TTH, I believe, tougher than hell is the
Okay,
acronym
there we go.
that they've been using with the helmet sticker. You see it on shirts and things like that as well for this group. But I think that is a really good point, right? Because it seemed like, with a guy like Chevin Cordero, who the staff inherited, there
Yeah.
was a little bit of trying to fit the square peg in the round hole. It's like, look, Chevin Cordero's skill set's terrific, really productive, maybe don't quite fit what they were trying to do offensively. And so they were sort of trying to rectify that late in the season. They seem to find something. Obviously, he is no longer with the program. Maybe Braden Chigger is the guy that sort of fits that mold. But I'm with you. Finding a bit of that identity is a really good one. And so I just got a couple of quick other ones that I think sort of tie into all of this, right? And you mentioned sort of building relationships within the community, building buy-in. I think a lot of that can tie into recruiting as well, continuing to build the relationships with, the local high schools, the local coaches, right? There is so much talent out here.
Totally.
You just look at some of the state tournaments, right? Some of these guys over at Kahuku, look, many of those guys are destined for programs that if they come calling, Hawaii's got no chance. I get that. But you got to try, right? You got to try with some of these guys. You saw the offer extended to a kid like Blazin Lono Wong, 6'4", 235, 240 rush end from Kailua. Like kids like that. Like you've got to continue to build those relationships with programs that continue to pump out talent. And quite honestly, that is almost every program in Hawaii. Like there are guys from Kaimuki that have played Power 5 football in recent years, right? Like small schools produce. And so you've got to be able to go into those schools, go into those coaches' rooms and build relationships and continue to do that. You look at, some of the neighbor island programs. You look at Kapa'a this past week, just bulldozing their way to a state title in Division II. Like if some of those offensive linemen, my God, those kids could move at like 300 pounds. They got a 400-pound kid that was just demolishing dudes out there. Get them to Hawaii, like find a way, right? At least give them some offers. Like so many of these high school coaches have like Mike Trester, the coach at Kapa'a, is a University of Hawaii great. Like so many of these guys have ties or played at the University of Hawaii. So we got to be able to build that. We got to be able to build on that. And I'm not saying it's not already taking place, but that's got to continue to be built on, and it cannot be something that can ever be taken for granted.
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys are going to get Power Five, big time Power Five offers, but it may not be the loudest voice in the back of their head, but getting some love and getting some attention from University of Hawaii and just having that offer there, that is talking to you a little bit, to be a part of the future and the history of Rainbow Warrior football. It, it means something to local kids. I was just on the plane next to a kid that's playing junior college right now, asking me, "Hey, I'm thinking about coming back and walking on for Hawaii. I've always dreamed about playing for Hawaii." It matters to local kids. I remember Larry Tualeta, a great friend of mine, who ended up playing at USC and transferred back to Hawaii. The offer from Hawaii weighed similarly to an offer like USC because it's Hawaii. It means something different to local kids. And I hope that they realize that when talking to some of these guys, it weighs differently than anywhere else on the mainland.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then my last one is just my New Year's resolution for the state is just to kind of offer more institutional support, right? Whether it's getting the new Aloha Stadium Entertainment District built out, whether it's building out Ching on campus, whether it's, providing better facilities, providing, a better structure in place, like just more of that. And I know I am asking for the moon. But it'd be, you got to start somewhere, right? You got to start with the resolution. And maybe we'll get something out of the Senate hearing coming up 2:30 on Friday, January 7th. According to the announcement put out by both the Senate Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Higher Education Committee. There are two agenda items. One is, quote, budget and cost related to coaching staff contracts. And the other is, quote, issues relating to the transfer of players. I don't know which direction they're going with that. I don't know what kind of questions will be asked. I am not sure who, if anybody, from the University of Hawaii will be present at these hearings. But I do know there are some pretty prominent senators that are on these committees. I mean, you're talking about the Ways and Means Committee. That is the money committee when it comes to the Senate. Like, that is the all-powerful committee that's chaired by Donovan Dela Cruz. He's got a lot of sway. You're talking about guys like Glenn Wakai on that committee. He is one of the big proponents of the Aloha Stadium reimagining. He has always been very sort of vocal and involved when it comes to University of Hawaii issues, developments, including the athletic side. You got Kurt Favela, who always asks some tough questions. And then the Higher Education Committee is chaired by Senator Mercado Kim. And I would never want to be in front of an inquisition led by Senator Kim. If many will remember the Wonder Blunder in some of those hearings that came out of that. You better come prepared. That's all I will say. So at the very least, there may be some tough questions asked, maybe, or at least some tangible ideas discussed. I don't know, right? I'm not real sure exactly what this will look like, what will come of it, if it's warranted. Like, some will say maybe it's a little bit of overreach here. Some will say, where have they been all this time? Some will say, great, this is awesome. I don't know. We'll see. Tune in maybe at 2:30. I'd imagine there's some very interested parties who will want to check this out. But for my New Year's resolution to offer some more support to this program, maybe this is a start.
Yeah. I'm just thankful that some higher up powers that be are taking notice. It's not just this, let the football team go do what they want to. We've got bigger fish to fry. Let's talk about the rail or something. It shows the guys on the team, support staff, coaches, support staff in general, that people are taking notice to potentially real pain and real problems that are going on in connection to our football program. And I'm just thankful that voices are being heard. People are paying attention, and they're not gonna just sit by without at least talking and addressing and getting down to what potentially has gone down here in the 2021 season.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm going to imagine we'll maybe have some things to talk about following that Senate hearing on episode 20 next week of Hawaii Football Now. As we kind of wrap things up, Hunter, we're running a little short on time, so I'll let you take the lead here on the overtime segment if you got a little something to add on as we close out episode 19.
Oh, man, I wanted more for Cincy. I wanted more for Cincy against Alabama. It wasn't necessarily a blowout. Alabama's defense obviously proved to be too much for Cincinnati's passing attack. But I got to tip my cap. I felt like it was closer than the Georgia-Michigan game.
Yep.
And Michigan's definitely a bigger athletic program than Cincinnati is. So I have to tip my cap a little bit to those guys.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. People are, Cincinnati doesn't belong, all those kinds of things. It's like they put up a better fight against Alabama than Michigan put up against Georgia. And quite honestly, defensively, put up a little more resistance than Georgia did against Alabama in the SEC title game. So I think that's a bunch of hogwash. But of course, it's Bama, Georgia in the national championship game. Like it just seemed inevitable, like Thanos, like it was about to happen.
Yeah.
And on next week, Monday, it'll be the national championship game. So we'll see how that plays out. We can discuss a little bit of that to close out next week as well. That'll wrap things up for us on episode 19. Hunter, Happy New Year again, man. This has always been a lot of fun. Jaron, same to you and to everybody else out there. We wish you a happy new year, a prosperous new year, and more University of Hawaii football wins. That's something I think we can all get on board with. That'll do it for us now on episode 19 of Hawaii Football Now. Big mahalo to Xanthison as well, our presenting sponsor. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Aloha.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.